Here is a passage from The Passenger. I could never imagine a white Christmas in San Francisco, aside from the fact that, as far as I understand, snow in the city is almost as rare an occurrence as finding a moderately priced one-bedroom apartment. The holiday season in San Francisco brings to mind not pristine whites or candy cane reds, but rather it evokes neon blues in my mind's eye, the kind that you could imagine emanating from a closed sign on a sushi restaurant window on a Sunday night. San Francisco, even on its best behavior, is rarely pristine. Anyone caught walking Market Street after midnight and before sunrise knows this, as it is during those hours that the streets are buzzing with an electric kind of aura. Almost immediately following sunset, a certain hard-to-describe something permeates the very essence of the city. It's something that's a little off, a little dirty, a little subversive, and perhaps even a little sleazy. Under the cloak of night, the seams of San Francisco's seedy underground begin to show. I've been walking around for a few hours without a real destination, and ended up in the Mission Bay neighborhood of San Francisco. Its aesthetic is something of a cross between a Pixar film and a game of Tetris. Its geometric design and architecture accentuated by cool cobalt neon lights lining empty recently poured sidewalks. These lights are as beautiful in their sterile glow as they are daunting, illuminating block after block of megalithic structures that consist almost entirely of cubes, lines, and monochromatic color palettes. This was the San Francisco aesthetic that had come to define the last few years. An aesthetic of compliance, conformity, and the antiseptic pretenses of modular architecture. There was no counterculture here. I couldn't imagine a counter anything finding its home in the midst of so many perfect 90-degree angles. The San Francisco of the future here has all of the proper signifiers of community. New apartment buildings, some still in their wrappers, boast of gyms, community dining and game rooms, gardens, and other spaces for its residents to interact with one another. The only thing they lack, it seems, are residents with any real interest in creating community. Among the concrete cubes and all too well-planned garden spaces, there exists an uncomfortable emptiness, like being in a mall after closing time or arriving at a dinner after the check's been paid and almost all guests have left. It's uncanny, unnerving even. The sidewalks are just as empty. It's barely 9 p.m. and people are nowhere to be seen, despite the total lack of parking all around. I follow the road that goes underneath a freeway ramp held up high on a massive concrete pylon. In the distance, I see AT&T Park. I'm not sure if the water to my right is the bay, reflecting city lights, it's water still, or if it's just water. Underneath the freeway, I'm surprised to see an empty, eerily clean, and new park. It's brightly lit and includes 2 basketball courts, all completely empty. In the distance, past these, I notice a small chapel-sized structure by the water's edge, visible thanks in part to the ballpark. The chapel is glowing that same blue hue, that same buzzing kind of blue that is somehow both robotic and soothing, hypnotizing. It's the same kind of blue that tells me that though I am technically homeless and could have it much better, all is well. Through its core there is a very light electric pulse, the ticking of its mechanical belly. It is the same blue that highlights the snowflake-shaped lights lining Market Street. After a bit of walking, I find myself coming down San Francisco's biggest street. I'm kind of hungry, but almost everything is already closed. Somewhere around 8th Street, I see an open Subway, so I walk in and order myself a 6-inch tuna sandwich on wheat and an orange soda. The sole employee, a Pakistani or Afghani boy, has an unusually good demeanor considering he's stuck working this shitty minimum wage job on Christmas Eve. He wishes me a Merry Christmas anyway. I return the good wishes with a happy holiday, though coming from me it sounds a bit hollow. Admittedly, the holiday season hasn't meant much to me the last few years. As I step out of the restaurant, a panhandler who had been sitting down gets up and catches up with me and asks me if I have $1 to spare. I'm sorry, Captain. I'm just as broke as you are, I mumble, half to myself as I pass by, effectively having spent my last $6 on Christmas Eve dinner. You got a cigarette, then? He asks as he follows me out of the restaurant. As a matter of fact, I do, I reply. I hand him 3 cigarettes from the pack of Camel Crushes in my front pocket. Merry whatever holiday you're celebrating, I say hurriedly. I've given away almost an entire pack of cigarettes today, and so must remind myself that this isn't not a pleasantry, but rather it is my repayment of a debt to the universe. At the age of 30, I have to somehow balance out the forces that have allowed me to have spent the last 6 months traveling the country, relying largely on my dick as my primary means of making an income, finding shelter, and in some cases, getting cross country rides. As much as this may not sound ideal to all of you, it's a privileged position to be in. Many don't even have that as an option. My name is Julian Robert Xavier Gerbo, but these days I go more commonly by Xavier, my name of choice when representing myself as a multimedia artist, or by Xander when I am working as a gay male prostitute. I'm 31 years old, French born, but raised mostly in South Florida. I'm kind of on the short side, which isn't uncommon in the world of queer sex workers. We're all midgets. I have dark brown hair that is homohawked, or at least was at the time, and green and gold eyes, which I'm often told are my best feature. Thanks, man, you have a great Christmas too, says the panhandler, as he lights up what I hope is an extremely gratifying cancer stick. As he walks away, I cross Market Street and park myself and my suitcase, backpack, and teddy bear, my traveling companion, in the doorway of a Starbucks in order to get onto their Wi-Fi and find myself a space to be in on Christmas. Earlier in the day, I had been hanging out with an acquaintance at his small single resident occupancy, or read cheap, oversized, subsidized hotel room, with the intention of getting it on. 5 minutes and more drugs than he could handle later, he had abruptly gone from calm and cool to bug-eyed and paranoid, deciding quite abruptly that he had plans he had forgotten about, and proceeded to kick me to the curb. As bad as the situation could be, I'm not too concerned about getting harassed. The streets are dead empty. This is Christmas of the future, cool, isolated, detached. While children in other cities are leaving cookies out for Santa, the children of San Francisco are there are no children in San Francisco. People can barely afford to have dogs here, let alone kids. I could look upon this tableau and be sad. Sad to return to a San Francisco I no longer connect with. A San Francisco that in years' time I've witnessed um, go from home to cube and cubed soulless city. The Mission and the Castro being transformed into playgrounds for the rich and wealthy. The city has changed so rapidly that it now feels alien to me. Regardless, this is the only place that I know, and it's the only place I have ever felt truly comfortable calling home. I suppose that detached but familiar, if it was the best I could get, would have to be good enough. Even in spite of all of this, I must still acknowledge that after 6 months of traveling, it felt good to be back, even if what I had come back to wasn't quite what I had left. You're still home sweet home to me, I say out loud, as I often do when speaking directly to the city. We share a brief moment. It reminds me that it's better to have loved and lost than to never have experienced it at all. The moment comes to an abrupt halt as my phone informs me that I've received a text. It's my friend Keith, another he-hooker spending a quiet kind of Christmas at home with his dog Alex. He's inviting me to come spend the last of Christmas Eve with him and his dog. With 13 minutes left until Christmas Day, I take him up on his offer, figuring at least I'd be in wonderful company. I tighten my backpack and walk towards the Tenderloin, taking one final look down my beloved Market Street, bathing in light blue, quiet and mysterious as always. I knew this couldn't be forever, but for the time being, this was what I had. It was a bittersweet homecoming, perhaps, but homecoming nonetheless. Thank you very much. I hope that you will support this campaign to get my book edited